Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Pro Bono Happy Hour. I'm David Lipscomb, Director of Strategic Communications for PBI. Before we get started, we want to remind you of PBI's 2016 annual conference coming up March 23rd to 25th here in Washington, D.C. Get more information about the conference and register by visiting www.probonoinst.org/conference. In this episode of the Pro Bono Happy Hour, we present part one of our interview with Pam Wandzel of Fredrikson Byron. PBI's Eva Richardson spoke to Pam about managing high-profile cases, getting attorneys motivated to get involved in pro bono, running a pro bono program from the non-attorney perspective, and the firm's creative approach to producing its pro bono annual report. We hope you're comfortable wherever you may be, whether that's mid-commute, on your lunch break, working at your desk, or perhaps working on your own firm's annual report, and we hope you enjoy part one of Pam Wandzel's interview.
Hi, Pam. Thanks for joining us on the Pro Bono Happy Hour. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. Why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and the pro bono program at Fredrikson Byron?
Okay. Hi, Eva. So I've been with Fredrikson Byron for about 22 years, and I have been either the pro bono coordinator, manager, or director for about 20 years now. And it is a full-time position, and I'm the director of pro bono and community service. And we have a very broadly defined pro bono program with a lot of depth and breadth. We do everything from retail pro bono, housing law, transactional pro bono. We do consumer bankruptcy work through our volunteer lawyers programs and legal services programs, wills for seniors. But we also do a lot of large case pro bono. Currently, we have 3 active death penalty cases, an innocence case in Wisconsin, much like making of a murder. And we also are assisting on a death penalty case in South Dakota. And we just finished a very large human trafficking case with 12 other firms, for which the firm was awarded the AmLaw Global Legal Services Award.
Oh, wow, that's great. We have been aware of your firm's high-profile cases over the years, especially the exoneration of Damon Thibodeau, which we have been keeping up with here. How do you handle the media relations, the manpower, and the dollars that a case like that requires as a mid-sized firm? And how do you balance these high-profile cases with the more bread-and-butter poverty law cases?
Sure. Well, as a mid-sized firm, we have about 270 lawyers in 4 domestic offices. We have a couple lawyers in Shanghai. But as a mid-sized firm, we have to be very careful with how we leverage our resources. So, for instance, on our death penalty cases, Damon Thibodeau's case, as you mentioned, was a very large case. It was our, that was our second death penalty case that we took, and he was exonerated. We worked on that case for 12 years, and we were very fortunate that we partnered with the Capital Post-Conviction Center of Louisiana. And so while we had out-of-pocket costs on Damon's case, they didn't amount to a whole lot because of our partnership with them. And when I say not a whole lot, we ended up presenting all of our evidence that we had gathered through our partnership with CPCPL and Barry Scheck's Innocence Project. And once we presented the evidence that we had gathered, the district attorney actually completed a lot of the investigation and shared the cost with us and with the Innocence Project. So we were very fortunate that we were able to leverage our resources and eventually get Damon out. We also are very, very cautious in that we want to ensure that we don't take too many large cases at one time, that we can't do those bread and butter cases. So while I have a number of lawyers who go to clinic, do brief advice, brief service work, and then bring back cases from that, I tend to not tap them for those large cases.
Right.
And so we try to spread it out throughout the firm because I want to ensure that first of all of our lawyers are doing something that they want to do, because I feel very strongly that if they're engaged in something that they're passionate about, whether it's access to justice, saving someone's home, saving that security deposit so someone doesn't become homeless, or working on those more substantive issues that lead to legislative change or an exoneration of an innocent man, I want to make sure that we have the resources in place so that once we commit ourselves, that we can follow through.
Right.
So it really is a need to balance everything.
So switching gears a bit, I wanted to discuss how you get attorneys who may be struggling to do pro bono more involved in pro bono.
Mm-hmm. So it's a variety. As I mentioned, I have a very strong board. My board has made a commitment to do pro bono themselves. So this past year, I noticed that, again, people were feeling a little isolated. And, you get the winter blahs. I don't know about all over the country, but sometimes in January, the sun doesn't shine very much in Minnesota. And it gets cold. So I said, let's do a pro bono team challenge. And I went to the head of the litigation department, and he agreed. And I recruited 6 very diverse shareholders, and I got them on board. And I said, I want each of you to take a pro bono case, and I want you to work with someone you've never worked with before. And, the benefit is that we serve the community, but you will get to know other people. And I specifically chose people that didn't normally do pro bono or didn't do very much. And I found really good cases. I put these teams together, and we had check-ins, and we had a little competition. And at the end of it, there might have been some adult beverages served, but we had fun.
Yeah.
And the feedback was really good. We had like a little launch where each team went out and talked about the case together and found out personal interests. Lawyer 1 has just bought a percentage on a racing horse and likes to collect wine. And lawyer 2 says, yeah, I like wine. I mean, those types of connections were made. There is a theme about adult beverages here, by the way, but it happens.
Whatever it takes.
But the point is that, again, pro bono can be that integrator.
Yes, absolutely.
And get people together. And I think that sometimes people don't do pro bono because they think it's outside their area of expertise, or they have to go it alone,
right,
or they're afraid of making a mistake, or their schedule,
right,
prohibits it. And so creating these teams, and in this case, I mean, I've always created teams, but in this case, I wanted to do something fun, and people really enjoyed it, and they want to repeat it. And so now there's, these folks that just didn't do a lot of pro bono are saying, hey, when are we going to do another little team thing? And I love that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
So you have to get creative sometimes.
Once you get them involved, then they're much more likely to keep doing it. So. Exactly. Yeah. And I remember a kind of similar, related is you talked about at a past PBI conference about how Fredrikson's U.S. offices have pretty different pro bono cultures. So can you talk a little bit about how you handle cross-office pro bono initiatives and how you try to reconcile some of these differences?
Sure. It's something that we've worked on for a couple of years, and I'm actually making it a point of our strategic plan for pro bono this year. But, for instance, we have 2 offices in North Dakota, and North Dakota just does not have that culture of pro bono. They are smaller towns, and, people in those communities for generations, when someone needed something, they needed help with something, they typically went to their church or their place of faith, and the churches took care of things. The community came together for one reason or another. And the idea of needing legal assistance and needing it for free was pretty foreign. But, over the last 20 years or so, especially the last 10 years, because of the oil boom, the state has changed. And so as we developed our offices in Fargo and Bismarck and Des Moines, Iowa, we realized that the cultures are just different. But we wanted those offices to feel like they were a part of the bigger picture, a part of the culture of Fredrikson and Byron, and not isolated branch offices. So we decided to, go out there and visit and try to find some opportunities for our lawyers. And sometimes it's tough. In my Fargo office, it's a mini Minneapolis office. They do corporate law, they do litigation, they do employment. So we can find some opportunities there for them. It was much easier for us to do so. And it's a little bit bigger city, so there was just more need. In Bismarck, it was difficult because it's in the middle of the state, and even though it's the capital, there are very few nonprofits, there are very few organizations, and there just wasn't a huge need. Family law and housing. But my lawyers out there 90% of them were tied to the oil industry, so they were title lawyers. And they didn't know how to form an entity or go into court. Even the litigators, they were afraid of family law, for instance. So we took the time to get to know the lawyers, to offer them various opportunities. As I mentioned, we would do research. We would do shadow reports to the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. And I would ask my Bismarck lawyers to assist on that. And I found out that, they had this interest in things that were way outside the scope of their normal day-to-day activities and like to be a part of something that they could fit into their schedules, but also, stretch their minds, stretch their abilities somewhat. So we started off slow and found these very discrete projects. And then lo and behold, I got a call one day and they said, hey, someone approached us and can we do this, litigation on behalf of this group of people? And I'm like, well, yeah. So, we've gone from 0% to almost 3% in 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And now, though, again, like you said earlier, you get people to kind of test the waters and see that it's doable. But that spreads not only individually, but among the office. And so people are saying, wow, Jillian got to go to Madrid, Spain, and launch this project that Fredrikson did. Or, so-and-so is getting this really good feedback from this client for saving their home. And it starts to just sort of trickle up, and sometimes that's what you have to do. You need support top down, but you also need it bottom up.
Right.
And having our lawyers be able to find something that they can connect to, whether it's the military issues or human trafficking or just going and speaking to a group of entrepreneurs who want to know how to start a business. I mean, you find that connection and provide them an opportunity, and the enthusiasm is going to spread.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't happen overnight.
Nope, I'm sure, yeah.
It really doesn't, but, we persevere.
Oh, no, that's great to hear, though. It's a perfect example of how, if you just work at it over time, it can happen.
Well, and it also helps, again, as I said, that our board of directors and the president of our firm, John Koenig, is very committed to pro bono. He got the Distinguished Service Award from our local bar association this past year. And when he goes out to those offices, when he hires lawyers, he talks about pro bono. And I think that that's just vital.
Right.
Because then I can say, if John Koenig has the time and energy to take 4 cases at a time,
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
there's no excuse.
But,
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I
know that's fascinating. We recently talked to Scotty Brown over at Hunton and Williams on a different episode of the Pro Bono Happy Hour, and she talked about some of the benefits of being a non-attorney in your position. So can you talk about what it's like being in charge of a pro bono program from the non-attorney perspective?
Sure. I mean, I think it has its challenges, but I also think it has a lot of benefits. And so I think I'm fortunate in that we've always only had a non-lawyer in the position. So, and we've thought about bringing in a pro bono counsel, but we've decided not to. Because one of the things that I think helps is I tell people I'm not managing the cases, I'm managing the program. And, I think that's a distinction. So when I get cases in, oftentimes in order to encourage lawyers. I'm not a lawyer that says, I've vetted this, this looks perfect, I've worked it all up for you, here it is wrapped in a, silver bow and on a gold plate. I will go to a lawyer and say, I just got this request and I want to talk to you about it. And, it's not that I use being a non-lawyer as an excuse, because I was a litigation paralegal for more than a decade. It's about working through a case, thinking about it. Is it a good case? And reaching out to the lawyers to help vet that case and to work it up. And guess what? Oftentimes they'll take it or find someone to take it. And that's on the litigation side. So that's where it really, counts the most. I think that being a non-lawyer on the corporate side, our transactional program, it doesn't make any difference. It's about understanding community economic development. It's, again, and I keep repeating this, but everyone knows it's about relationship building and building those relationships with organizations, relationships of trust and dependability and reliability. So you don't have to be a lawyer for that, but you're that conduit.
Absolutely.
And I have time. I don't have a caseload. So I can really devote my time to developing the relationships, developing the program, looking at new ways of doing things. And I just think that I bring a different perspective. Sometimes I wouldn't say it's more human perspective, because I know a lot of lawyers that are in my position. I do a ton of pro bono, and they bring that perspective, but I just don't know that it's necessary to be a lawyer.
Oh, definitely.
Again, it depends on the program and the firm.
That's true. Fredrikson's 2014 Pro Bono annual report, it's a very impressive collection of pro bono stories, and I'd imagine this must have taken a lot of effort. So how did you come up with this innovative way to package your firm's annual report?
Well, we've done an annual report, since at least 1993 or 4. And it was a good report. It's always been a good report. We wanted to bring some color to it. So, years ago we did the, regular 8.5 by 11. And then we were sitting around talking, and we've always talked about, the fact that we're helping real people. Regardless of the case or the type of case, for the most part, pro bono is about helping people. Even if you're working on behalf of a nonprofit, in the end, you're telling a story about why it's important. And so I latched on to, the fact that these are stories. And we started talking about how stories have an impact. When you think about, some of the best books you've read and how those stories shaped your life and some of your decisions, wouldn't it be great if we just told the stories and left the quantitative information to the side? We include it, but it's almost an afterthought, because those stories resonate and because we're touching people's lives. So once we started talking about stories, our graphic designer said, well, what if we change it to a storybook? And so we thought about that, and we said, sure. And we've used that ever since. And I think that one thing I want to impress is, I write the majority of our annual pro bono report, but it's a team effort. I think ours is successful. It's one of many out there that are successful. I could name a number of firms that I just can't wait to get their annual report.
Right.
But I think ours is successful because it really is a team effort. Our marketing is involved, our graphic designer is involved, and the committee. So it really is something that we enjoy writing. I keep stories, in a file, pro bono wins and pro bono outcomes. And when June comes around and I have to start writing, I just open the file and, start using the material that I've been given.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of material to work on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's really nice. And as I said, it really is a team effort, and we're very proud of it. And we mail it to our top clients and the judges and the communities where we serve, and we get a lot of really positive feedback.
Oh, that's great. Have you seen it had this iteration of the annual report have a different impact on attorneys at the firm, or?
I know they're really proud of it. We have a number of lawyers that send it out personally. And I think that the impact comes when we get comments from judges or clients. And one year, we had a client who, we sent it out in October, and we had a client who wrote to us in like January and said, hey, I set this, I got this, I set it down over the holidays. I, was sitting, just took some time off and read it front to cover, and I can't tell you how impressed I am with you and your firm. I'm so glad that you're at that firm, and I'm glad I'm doing business with a firm that does this.
Oh, wow.
And we shared that with the whole firm, and I think, again, it just brings a sense of pride, not only to the lawyers, but to the staff. I mean, I've had staff say, I share this with my family, and they're so proud of who I work for.
Yeah.
And, and again, I think, Eva, that part of it is because we don't focus on the lawyers as much as the clients and the outcomes and the impact. And I work really hard to make sure that these are stories about real people and what their situation was, and how even just a couple hours of pro bono time makes a huge impact sometimes. It's not always the big impact cases that makes an impact.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to say it. And your annual report certainly gets that across.
Thank you.
And to wrap things up, kind of a more fun question. Who would you say is your pro bono role model?
Oh, my goodness. There's been many. Certainly Jim Bailey, who, really raised pro bono nationally on many fronts, especially the transactional pro bono programs and bankruptcy and whatnot, and really pushed through the ABA pro bono agendas. He was a mentor of mine, so he's on the top of the list. But I think that there's just, I don't know, there's just so many. I mean, here when I started, I was a blank slate. I'd never worked in a law firm before. I wasn't trained. I didn't know anything. And the group of coordinators at that time, Candy Goodman and Pam Kaufman, Jody Boderman, they welcomed me with open arms and taught me what I know. Folks like Cheryl Naja and Jacinica Brown, who, they have my jobs, but they do them so creatively.
Right. And
with such panache. And I tell them all the time, I want to be you. And, so, I mean, there's many, many, many heroes. Esther, of course, and Tammy. But, I think that we all have heroes that affect us in different ways. And that's certainly true, in pro bono.
Definitely. Well, Pam, I want to thank you for your time today. We really appreciate you speaking with us about your pro bono program and your experiences.
Thanks, dear. I enjoy it very much. Thank you for including me.
You just heard from Pam Wandzel of Fredrikson Byron. We thank Pam for spending some time with us, and we're eager to share part 2 of her interview next week. Don't forget to visit www.probonoinst.org/conference for more information and to register for PBI's annual conference, which again will be held March 23rd to 25th here in Washington, D.C. To listen to more podcasts in this series or learn about additional pro bono resources, visit www.probonoinst.org/podcast. If you're interested in having your firm featured on the Pro Bono Happy Hour, please email us at probono@probonoinst.org. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Pro Bono Happy Hour.